I'm Christa, shamanic practitioner, as well as teacher of shamanic classes. I also teach Ukrainian folk healing classes and Slavic folk healing classes. And welcome to my video on how to make Ukrainian Easter eggs called Pysanky, the traditional way, using brown eggs and natural made dyes from beets and turmeric spice. So please watch on and learn how to make these beautiful traditional eggs. I decided to work with brown eggs for this video because there was a supply shortage of eggs where I live due to flooding, which wiped out the chicken farms, and also there was avian flu going around, so getting white eggs was really difficult, and I thought it would be interesting to do a video using brown eggs instead. Okay, so let's talk about the supplies that you need. So here I used organic brown eggs, and you can see that there's a different color of the eggs. One is lighter and one is a darker shade. You will also need to work with a kistka. This is a writing tool that you will use to be able to write lines in melted wax onto the egg to make your designs. So you will also need to work with natural beeswax to use this to write your designs onto the egg. And then you will need candles, a candle holder, and a lighter. To make the natural dyes, you will also need a beet, turmeric powder, and white vinegar. Here I used organic beets and organic turmeric to make my dye. So now we're ready to go. So when we make these special eggs, it's a good idea to create a nice atmosphere. Here I put some flowers. I have a rose quartz crystal just to create a nice atmosphere. I also played some beautiful background music, just ambient music. When making eggs, it's very important to be in a positive mindset or a neutral mindset. So it's not a good idea to decorate eggs when you're feeling anxious, angry, sad, or depressed. When making the eggs, it is a very sacred act, so people would often speak a prayer or blessing when making the egg right at the beginning before drawing the design. So these can be beautiful blessings that can be said in order to create this egg into a healing talisman, saying blessings to release illness, speaking blessings to prevent illness, speaking blessings of protection, protection from negative forces or even negative people. You can say prayers and blessings to ensure good health, good fortune, to ensure success, abundance, and prosperity. So whichever blessings and prayers you choose to work with, speaking that right at the beginning before drawing the design onto the egg is key. In this design, I'm working with the symbol of a rosa, which is a flower, also can be combined with a star, so that's interchangeable. So this is an 8-point star or an 8-petal rose that I'm working with. Each symbol has its own meaning. For this one, the star or the rosa symbolizes purity, life. It also is associated with the giver of light, beauty, and harmony. So different symbols have different meanings. There's a variety of different symbols that are used to decorate eggs. That can include birds, animals, deer, the ram, the rooster, or chickens. Sun is really common, so different motifs of sun energy. Then there's also geometric shapes, dots, triangles, wavy lines, borders, even square lines. Also, rakes were a common motif, especially in cultures where the people were farmers. So rakes were very common to ensure a good harvest. Also, combs is a variation of that. Combs. Crosses were quite popular as well. So this can include Christian cross, but it can also include other crosses, which in Ukrainian the word is krest. Trees, branches, leaves were also very common. Wheat designs were common, so designs that depicted green, wheat being very common. And butterflies as well, that was also a very common motif. So there's a variety of motifs that you can work with. This one that I'm working with, the rosa or the star, is an easy, simple design to work with. I also drew some dots on the petals of the rosa, so drawing some dots as well. And then I also added some little hearts on the periphery of the lines, just to symbolize love as well. I wanted to put that love energy into it. The dots represent the circle of life, so it represents life, rebirth, and death cycles. Also, it can include longevity as well and eternity. So I wanted to add some dots there as well. So a variety of different motifs can be used, and it's fun to think about what the motifs symbolize and what you want to put into the egg, and it can also correspond with the prayer or the blessing that you say in the beginning. I won't go into what the different symbolize of the different motifs are in this video. That would be a whole other huge video topic. But just know that you can work with the ones that really speak to your heart. So here's the finished design drawn in pencil. Now let's talk about how to make the natural dye. So I'm using organic turmeric here. So I've got my pot of water. I'm going to add 3 big heaping spoons, tablespoons, of the turmeric into the water. And I bring the turmeric to a boil and then turn it down to medium heat. I let it simmer like this for a good 40 minutes to give it a very deep, rich color. So let's now make the beet dye. I'm just chopping up the beets so that it can be boiled down into a dye. So adding the beets to the water, I brought the beets to a boil and I boiled them for a good hour to make sure that the color was vivid and rich. So now I've let the turmeric dye cool down to room temperature. Now I'm adding a spoon of vinegar, a tablespoon. This allows the dye to adhere to the egg, giving it a vivid color. You would also need to add the vinegar to the beet dye as well. And now I'm adding the egg to the turmeric dye. I will let the egg rest in here for a couple of hours. It does take longer to dye these eggs and the color will be more muted, not vivid like synthetic dyes. And then I will cover the lines with the hot melted wax to preserve the color. Okay, so now let's have a look at the egg, and this is the color. It's not a vivid yellow, but rather it's a golden yellow. And then I just put it in the paper towel to very gently get off the excess liquid so that the egg will dry before writing the wax onto the egg. Now I begin writing the wax onto the egg. So how this works is I take the kiska, the writing tool, and I will put it into the candle flame to heat up the tool, and then I will scoop wax into the larger end and then hold it over the candle flame to melt the wax inside the reservoir of the kiska. And then with the pointed tip, I will write the melted wax onto the egg, covering up the pencil lines. And underneath this layer of wax is the brown golden color of the turmeric dye. So I will keep working in this way. It is a slow process when you work with it. You can only get so much wax in a line. It's a small area that you can write the wax. So I have to continuously heat up the kiska, then dip it into the wax, and then heat it up again so that the wax can flow. This process takes patience, and it becomes like a meditation as well as you are writing the wax onto the egg. Now, as I continue to write the wax on the egg in this way, I continue to say blessings and prayers, the same one that I spoke in the beginning when I was drawing out the design. And I can repeat that blessing, that prayer as I go. And as I do, it infuses that healing energy into the egg, turning it into a talisman, making it a very powerful talisman. So for this one, just as an example blessing that I said, may this egg be infused with pure energy to restore health to all people, to restore harmony in relationships, and to bring light into the world, to dispel all negativity, to raise the collective consciousness to a nice bright level. So this was the blessing that I worked with, variation on those words, but that was the theme. So I continue to work in this way to cover all of the lines completely. So I will cover all of the lines completely, working in the similar way as I go, saying blessings and prayers along the way to really infuse those blessings into the egg to make it really strong and powerful so that this egg becomes a beautiful and sacred talisman. And this is a sacred process as I work. Now, one thing to know when you're writing the wax onto the egg, that sometimes you run out of wax and so that the line becomes really thin and wispy. So it is a good idea to go over that line to make the wax really solid. And also, as you work, sometimes if there's too much wax in the reservoir of the kiska, then sometimes the wax can pour out very quickly and you end up with a big blob on top of the egg. And that blob can be very undesirable because you might not have wanted to cover that area of the egg with the wax. So what you can do is very gently, either with your fingernail or a pin, you can scratch off the excess wax there and remove it. If you don't remove it and you put the egg back into the dye, then that area is underneath the wax is going to contain the previous dye color, and you might not want that in your design. So it's definitely worth just very gently scratching off that excess wax, that wax blob, and to do so very carefully so that you don't scratch the egg shell. So here's an example of a blob that I'm just scraping off with my fingernail, just very gently to get rid of it and then continue on. So here's some more progression of the egg. I'm now covering the petals of the rosa or the points of the star and filling it in, but I'm leaving the dots exposed. I'm going to be putting this egg next into the beet dye, and I want the dots to be red and then the background color to be red. So everything that I'm covering in the wax is going to remain that brownish golden color. So as you can see, I'm almost finished covering the design in the wax, and I'm just now finishing up that last little bit, continuing to say blessings and prayers as I go, and just putting on the last finishing touches there and covering up that last little bit. And at the end, when I finish covering the egg, I will give thanks. So now you can have a look at the final design with all of the wax covering the design. So now I'm putting the egg into the beet dye. I will let it rest for a good 4 hours. It does take a while for the egg shell to soak up the color of the beets. So I've taken the egg out of the beet dye, and now is the time to remove the wax. So this is a very slow, patient process. So how it works is I take the egg and hold it very close to the candle flame to heat up the wax. When the wax begins to melt, it becomes liquid and shiny, and then I quickly wipe off that liquefied wax onto a paper towel. You can only do a little bit at a time. You cannot do a large area. Now, it is very painstaking to do this, but well worth it, because you want to come close into the candle flame, but you don't want to come too close because you don't want the candle flame to burn the egg. I have ruined many eggs doing that because I became impatient and wanted to take the wax off very quickly, and then I scorched the egg. I did not do that with this egg, but I have learned from past mistakes. So going very slowly and carefully is key to ensure that you're taking off the wax properly. Also, this process does become like a meditation as well. And at this point, you can continue to say blessings and prayers as you take the wax off, because that helps to keep you focused. It also keeps you into that very good positive mindset to then ensure that good energy is going into the egg. You don't want that negative emotional energy going into the egg. So you don't want sadness going into the egg, anger going into the egg, or anxiety energy. So when you continue to say prayers and blessings, it really keeps you into a good, positive mindset. So here's now a photo when all of the wax has been taken off of this egg. So you can see in the flower part, the rosa, the star, that it is that brownish golden color, and then darker background color and darker of the dots. So here's a final photo of 3 eggs that I made in this traditional way. So the egg in the top is the one that's featured in this video. On the lower left is an egg with a sunflower motif, which represents abundance and prosperity and success. On the lower right is a rooster, which represents success, good luck, good fortune, as well as being able to realize your goals, being able to also birth goals into life. So I really enjoyed working with these natural dyes in this way. The colors are more muted, but to me it looks like it has a very rich, warm tone. Synthetic dyes are very bright. You can get shades of bright purple, bright orange, bright red, bright green, which are also beautiful. But this was a fun process to make natural dyes in this way, and this is how my Ukrainian ancestors would make them long ago. So even making this natural dye in this way and working with this process, I felt very connected to my ancestors. So we have lots of options when we make these eggs. We can work with brown eggs, we can work with white eggs, and these brown eggs give an interesting option. So I hope you have enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching. If you would like to learn more about shamanism, I do offer live and interactive online shamanic classes, as well as I do shamanic healing sessions, which are private one-on-one sessions. I do those online on Zoom, so you can check out my class schedule or book a shamanic session with me on my website, shamanicspirit.ca. And if you're also interested in Slavic folk healing and Ukrainian folk healing classes, you can also check out my website, shamanicspirit.ca. So thank you so much for watching. Lots of love and light and blessings to you, and may you have fun making and decorating your beautiful Pysanky eggs.